This is Sister Zsa Glamour of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence Incorporated, and this is the Epistle. Today I will be reading to you from a letter I've written to the Archbishop of San Francisco, George Niederauer. Dear Mr. Niederauer, I am writing to respond to your offensive and demeaning press release that was excerpted in the San Francisco Chronicle and on sfgate.com, and to give you some real-world perspective on the issue of Proposition 8. You've probably noticed that I'm addressing this letter to Mr. Niederauer rather than by your job title. Well, I am not one of your co-workers, nor am I one of your customers. Therefore, your job title has no bearing in this communication. As far as I'm concerned, you are merely the district manager of a multinational foreign corporation. You have as much clout in the real world as the most holy reverend district manager of a Bay Area Starbucks. However, if you insist that your job title somehow gives you a special voice to the voters of San Francisco, I trust that you will equally acknowledge my ecumenical status as a member of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence Incorporated, because, in your words, tolerance, respect, and trust are always two-way streets. If you prefer that I acknowledge you by the terms Archbishop or Most Reverend in further communications, I trust that you will refer to me thereafter by my title as Sister. In fact, I've held my title in San Francisco since 1991, and your job transfer only occurred a few years ago. So, if ecumenical titles do mean anything in the political arena, I would, in a sense, outrank you. My point, though, is that spiritual beliefs have no place in politics, particularly if they come directly from the pulpit. If you feel obliged to address a political issue you felt strongly about, you have the right to speak out as George, but it is inappropriate in your vocation to get involved in politics on company time. You need to learn that there are things you can and can't do while on the company time clock or wearing your work uniform. If your primary allegiance is to a European foreign nation / corporate headquarters, rather than the laws of the United States of America, then your status as a public figure is questionable, if not treasonous. If you or other supporters of Proposition 8 are insistent that the connotation of words like marriage and domestic partnerships are separate but equal, then you should have no problem with the media or the public making no distinction between terms like Catholic Church and Catholic Corporation. The organization with whom you are employed is in the business of collecting money and providing services, not unlike numerous other nonprofit corporations. It's that special connotation of words like church that put organizations like yours in a special category. Wouldn't it be sad if the playing field between your employer and other competing nonprofits or corporations were suddenly level? Is that what you fear by allowing everyone to have the same marriage rights? Do childbearing heterosexuals deserve special rights, just like churches deserve special rights over nonprofit corporations that provide the same services? Isn't that a bit arrogant? I strongly disagree with the following statement you wrote for several reasons. The churches that worked in favor of Proposition 8 did so because of their belief that the traditional understanding and definition of a marriage is in need of defense and support, and not in need of being redesigned or reconfigured. Well, number one, churches should not be involved in secular political issues. As written, Proposition 8 made no mention of churches or religion. Number two, to what era of civilization does the term traditional marriage refer? 50 years ago? 100 years ago? 2,000 years ago? My grandmother had a traditional marriage in the early 1900s. She was considered the property of her husband, and therefore it was unnecessary for her to vote. If that fits your definition of a traditional marriage, then I propose that half the votes in favor of Proposition 8 should be disqualified because they were cast by traditionally married women. I'd love to hear you defend that notion of traditional marriage in today's world. Number three, the California Supreme Court defined civil marriage in 2008, period. A preemptive attack on the status quo orchestrated by you was an attempt to have the established law redesigned or reconfigured. Number 4, to date, not a single couple in a traditional marriage has stepped forward to state that the sanctity of their marriage has been affected by the 18,000 same-sex weddings that occurred in California. Mr. Niederauer, please provide us your list of divorce decrees in California that list sanctity of our marriage was destroyed by homosexuals as the reason for their divorce. One point to which we do agree is, as you wrote, we need to stop hurling names like bigot and pervert at each other, and we need to stop it now. Well, if you kept your mouth shut, kept your nose out of people's business, and put that statement out 3 months ago, you wouldn't be the focus of protests, would you? Oh, you poor, poor multi-billion-dollar corporate hack. You've been so singled out and discriminated against. I feel your pain right down to Joe Ratzinger's Prada shoes. Well, you were the one who went out of his way to kick this battle into high gear, and now you're going to have to deal with it. I also agree with your statement. We need to stop talking as if we are experts on the real motives of people with whom we have never spoken. As an unmarried celibate man who has made the choice to live a decidedly alternative lifestyle, I wholeheartedly agree that you are no expert in the field of relationships, yet alone domestic partnerships or marriage. Again, you need to keep your nose out of other people's business, especially during work hours. On the same note, have you actually spoken with members of the gay community other than sycophants who still buy into the fear and shame your corporation promotes? It's doubtful you have. So I'm taking this opportunity to invite you to meet with me and my fellow sisters to help you undo the damage you created. If it's possible to discuss this secular political issue in a way that is 100% secular, I can guarantee we will move closer to answering your question, what is the way forward for all of us together? If you agree to meet with us as George, a San Francisco voter, we would respect your distaste for our organization and meet with you in our secular persona as well, because as you say, respect and trust often do not include agreement or even approval. You ask, what is to be done? Well, here are my suggestions. Number 1, admit that you overstepped your bounds in getting involved in secular politics. Number 2, admit that your preemptive strike to enlist carpetbaggers from Utah was inappropriate. Number 3, admit that Proposition 8 campaign was not about religion, was not about children, and not about schools. Admit that your support for Proposition 8 was based solely on your own personal distaste for what homosexual Californians do in the privacy of their bedrooms. You have a right to say it. What are you afraid of? And number 4, join the 21st century, honey. Things change. What happened to all those Catholics who ate meat on Friday the day before Vatican II? Frankly, Mr. Niederauer, I am not holding my breath for a face-to-face meeting or even a written response. But you should be aware that you have lost a lot of respect with voters in San Francisco, many of whom are customers of the Catholic Corporation. I'm Sister Zsa Zsa Glamore, and this has been The Epistle.